This is Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Inspiring and providing real insight to our listeners with every story. Exploring deep stories behind every guest. Please welcome your host, Bo Tiffany.
Welcome back to another episode of Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. My special guest today is Sean Dale. Sean is an MFA Acting graduate who, like many other performing artists, lost a great deal of professional traction due to the pandemic. He sought to fill his void and create opportunity for his fellow creatives by creating the Borderless Theatre Company. The Borderless Theatre Company creates radio plays and drama, working with his other graduates within the graduating class that Sean attended to work virtually to create these radio plays and dramas. And this has been taking off. He's just finishing his first season. Very excited to promote him on my show. And with all that said, hey, Sean, thanks for coming on Digital Voices. How are you today?
Hey, Bo, I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. So you started a virtual podcast based on radio dramas and audio dramas and doing it virtually without borders as a way to deal with the pandemic. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Much like a lot of things during the pandemic, this came out of necessity for, actors and writers and directors to find work. And so my team and we had just basically graduated fresh out of grad school when we were studying over in London at a school called East 15 Acting School. And we had done a small training on voiceover and audio drama, and they had a huge thriving scene there, like much bigger than it is here in the States. And so it's like we were, as soon as we got back, we were like, well, how do we make something like this work? But everyone is trying to get back to their own lives and da. But as soon as the pandemic hit, all of a sudden people just found themselves with all this free time. And literally, like, it sounds so corny, but I literally woke up in the middle of the night, like probably a week into the start of the pandemic. And I was just like, radio plays. I was like, we need to do something with audio drama where we're taking, people's new scripts and finding a way to continue the whole age-old tradition of the staged reading, and bringing that to podcast form so that these writers can continue to put their work out. So that's kind of a long-winded, way of explaining it. But yeah, that's how it came about.
No, it's innovative and it's adaptive, which is really two keys that you need to succeed. Great way to have an outlet for your creative juices. Before I get too much more into that, let me take you back to your roots. Where are you from originally?
Yeah, I'm originally from Aurora, Colorado.
Big town, small town?
It's a medium-sized town. Well, it's a big town. It's a big town. It's just outside of Denver. And it's, I think, actually, like the largest city outside of the largest town that Denver has. And so, yeah, it's a pretty big town, very diverse. People it has all different kind of demographics there that live there. So, yeah.
I've spent some time out that way, and I really appreciated it's kind of the new Silicon Valley is Boulder area, which is right next to Denver. I found a lot of professionals and a lot of really intelligent people that you can really have insightful conversations with. Being from that area, are you a skier?
You know what? That's funny. No, I am not. My parents weren't skiers, and so therefore my family, my sister and myself were not skiers. But it seems like everybody else who came to Denver, they're like, "You don't ski?" It was like a blasphemy. It was like blasphemy.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what started bringing me out that way. What were your interests as you lived out that way?
I have always been an theater kid. I love that kind of stuff, any opportunity for that. But I also, we would go hiking. We liked to spend time out in the mountains, just doing hikes and stuff like that as a family. I also played tennis, but I didn't really pick that up until college. And so,
Okay.
but when I moved back to, back home after college, I picked it back up again and just really found a love for that. I'm trying to think of anything else that really, those were kind of the things I was in really mostly.
Sure.
Yeah.
How did your family move out to Colorado?
Yeah. My dad is originally from Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, and my mom is Kansas City, Missouri. And they met in Alabama in college in Alabama. And so, they migrated out to Denver in their post college years. So no, there's not like, there wasn't like what am I trying to say? It's not like it's not where my family comes from. Most of my family is actually from Ohio.
Sure.
So
Have wanted to move out to the Colorado area for a long time, just due to the beauty. The mountains and the change of scenery and elevations gives you, within just that state, a wide variety of landscapes, between deserts to mountains to forest. It's an amazing place.
oh yeah, it's incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. My wife and I just recently actually drove out to Los Angeles because she's a travel nurse, and
Oh, okay.
so she got a job traveling out here in the area, and so we had to make that long drive through up I-70 and all the
Mm,
way through. And I mean, you just don't get tired of it. I mean, it's just
no.
one scene after another. As soon as you hit those mountains, it's like it never ends. Then you get to the bluffs, and then you get to the Grand Mesa over in Grand Junction, and then you start to
Hmm.
see all the stuff in Utah like Moab,
Yeah.
and oh man, yeah, that whole drive is just probably one of my favorite drives in the U.S.
Yeah, mine too. Just can't say enough good things about it. But
Oh yeah.
getting back to you,
Yeah.
so you're in school and you're into acting and drama. Did
Mhm.
you have a lot of resources for that at your school?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. You mean like the school like high school or like graduate school you're talking about?
Like high school, just to kind of get you started. I'm assuming
Oh
that's when
yeah.
those juices started to flow. What kind of
Yes.
things did you first get involved with?
So they had a really strong theater program. Like most of my best friends that I even have to this day were involved in theater in some way, shape, or form. But the cool thing about the school that I went to, it wasn't like your traditional um stereotypical school that you'd see on TV where like the theater kids were the nerds. Actually, the theater kids were like the cool kids getting nominated for like homecoming and prom and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so there was a huge respect across the board for theater. And so when I, was interested in that, it fit really, really well with being able to feed those creative juices, but at the same time feel comfortable in my skin as a whole through high school.
For
Um,
sure.
and our teacher was just incredible. She put on shows that challenged us and that helped us grow. She saw that we had an affinity towards this particular art form,
Hmm.
and sh- you know she really honed in on each of us and really sparked that fire. We had this wonderful tradition at the end of each play, on the very last night of each play, where we would get in a circle and she would turn off the lights, but then she would light this one candle and talk about the flame of the theater and how it keeps burning. And it, even though, we will leave that stage, hopefully the flame of the theater will continue to burn on in our hearts and carry us to different places and different stages in life. And I've always carried that with me. It was a really just wonderful environment to begin my craft.
Yeah, and it sounds like you had someone that really kind of was able to nurture that within you. It's fortunate when we have mentors or just people that come along at the right time that help to shape that with us.
Mm.
As you kind of went through school, this obviously was a gift that grew within you that was really nurtured by, what was her name?
Her name was Sherry Van Hasselens, but we called her Miss V.
Well, so nurtured by Miss V. As you were getting done with school, were you looking at college?
Yeah, I was. But I grew up in a time where, um, I mean, I grew up in a community where theater and stuff it was a good hobby. It
Sure.
wasn't like a career choice, and so I was encouraged to look outside of that for a professional career, and maybe do it on the side as a hobby or do my minor in it or something. And so I was persuaded by that for college, and ended up choosing public relations with a minor in theater.
Nice. Well, that kind of, I would think public relations and that ability to speak and speak in front of other people really helps within acting.
100%. 100%. And that's mostly why I decided to go for public relations, because I was like, well, I didn't want to give up the piece of me that was creative, and I wanted to find something that would take what I knew instinctively and feed that into something professionally. And so that actually led me into radio, which is funny because now I'm, starting this podcast. It directly relates to the things that I enjoyed about my major in college.
Yeah. Let me ask you a couple of questions going back to high school and then college. There's certain pillars that you formed, that self-confidence, the ability to speak in front of people. What other things can you identify that you were able to pick up from that time that helped lend its hand to what you're doing now?
I would say most of all, problem solving.
Mm.
Problem solving and leadership. Because each actor, no matter what role you play, has ownership of their own role that they play,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding where they fit in the puzzle as a whole. It really helps. Well, it has helped me in this particular project to, step out and know my role as as the CEO of this project, and stay in my lane, as well as recruit people who are also good at other things and staying and letting them shine.
Mm-hmm.
And then problem solving, going back to that, it's, as an actor, you really have to do your research. You do a lot of critical thinking when it comes to crafting a role. You can't just imitate if you want to do something well,
Right.
if you want to play a character well. And so there's a lot of trying to navigate difficulties around creating things, not just characters, but just creating things in general. And I've used that, especially with this pandemic, to figure out, okay, how can we make this work? And, under these circumstances, and how, it's all about being adaptive. And so I've definitely, those have been some key pillars in my training and in my upbringing, for sure.
Yeah, and very valuable to have developed those early. A lot of people take a little bit more time to develop those key pillars. When you got into school, any extras that you were doing there, or was it most of your extra time was going into drama projects and things like that?
Yeah, when I got into school, I did do a lot of extra things. Like I said, I picked up tennis. I
Mm-hmm.
had always played football for the first part of high school.
Mm.
But then I had surgery on my knee, so then I had to kind of get rid of that. And plus, I was like, even though I'm a bigger guy, I was still the smaller guy on the field, and so it really didn't suit me well to play any sort of serious kind of football. But I
Sure.
signed up for all the intramurals and all of that at my college. But then I was also part of the Peace and Social Justice Club. I was the president of the Peace and Social Justice Club for, I think, my sophomore year. And
Mm-hmm.
then a girl that I dated at the time, she was the vice president. So it worked out really well. We got to spend time with each other and, save the world
Right.
one issue at a time, one social issue at a time.
What was the biggest thing that you picked up from that experience?
Yeah, mostly just to see humans as they are, from all walks of life, and to really find the similarities in humanity, and how we can, and that, I would say that mostly that.
Mm.
It really introduced me to different cultures. It inspired me to travel, which I had never done abroad up until that moment.
And that's an eye-opening experience in itself.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially if you go to like a non-English speaking, primarily non-English speaking country,
Mm-hmm.
it definitely challenges you, but inspires you. It's so inspiring.
I can't help but think that those experiences lent itself to your acting abilities.
I would hope so. I
Well, being
truly
able
would hope
to
so.
identify pretty much with any different culture, it gives you a kind of a behind the scenes, if you will, of who those people are rather than our stereotype. And so as you're acting or you're trying to bring out something, I would imagine that those experiences and meeting those people and interacting with those people, depending on what you're doing and within that project, might help lend itself to forming that character or, bringing that out a little bit more in an
100%.
authentic way.
Yeah, 100%. And yes, acting is all about storytelling, and
Yeah.
you can't tell a story if you don't live, and see other people's stories.
Yeah.
And so having that experience really allowed me to tell other stories that I didn't even consider, really, stories. Like, for example, we lived in England, my wife and I, for 2 years during those grad school years. And, just learning how different life is over there, even though it's an English speaking country, learning how different they, conduct life and the things that they see as important and stuff versus what we here in the States see as important was a huge eye opener. And allowed me to connect deeper with my family because they're very family oriented in Europe in general, just very family oriented. And so it brought a lot of that out for me.
There was a cultural appreciation. I've traveled 12 countries.
Oh, wow.
And I've done a lot of time in Europe, in the Mediterranean. Each place is different. One thing that I did appreciate is the Eurail system. Did you ever get to take advantage of that and kind of explore a little bit?
I did, but I didn't get, I didn't buy one of the big Eurail passes. I didn't buy one of those, but I did take the train to a few places when I was studying in Italy. So we both have that same kind of experience. Yeah.
Where exactly did you go, if I can ask?
So I started off in Florence and then made my way to Hungary. I went to Paris. I went to, oh my goodness, up through Spain and like Germany area and stuff. But those weren't until my second year that I was there. I like to travel a lot.
It's amazing because the countries over there, some of them are smaller than some of our states here, but yet each one has its own cultural and ethnical background, and the languages can change, in a very short distance. It just shows how much transportation has opened up the world to us. But it's still fun to travel over there because those customs are still in place to a large extent, and you get to experience such a variety of people and life and culture. I think that's the thing I brought back that I appreciated the most.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And recently, my wife and I have well, she started me on this path, but she likes wine. She really likes to explore different wines. And so when we had an opportunity to travel abroad together, it was like a whole new world opened up to us just with that. It was like, wow, trying different things here and there and seeing the different processes and how, we went to Croatia for our anniversary. I know this is kind of off topic, but exploring in general. We went to a very small town in Croatia for our anniversary. And, they take their wine, they put it in clay pots and they store the wine under the water, probably 30 or so feet down underwater, undersea, because it keeps a steady temperature.
Right.
And then so just being in that really small city, staying in an Airbnb where nobody understood English, and talking to, we had these two older folks sit us down, and we were on Google Translate, typing our answers out, then having them translate and back and forth, and tasting wine all at the same time and enjoying each other's company. We didn't know who they were, and we couldn't speak the same language, but it was like there was a mutual communion there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For as different as we are, we're so similar. And if we have the opportunity to not have a language barrier, it's amazing the connections that we can make. I I do feel like what you said with technology, especially Google Translate, and they also have like a live real-time translator now that I saw that came out recently.
Mm.
That's going to open up some doors to allow us to connect even more on a global and cultural basis. I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of those things, I think, are experiences and tools that you bring with you too. For you, I would imagine that it opened you up a little bit more so that you can probably talk to anybody at this point, right? Really helped in the public relations area too.
Definitely. I feel like I can. I mean, there's, it's actually, it's interesting because I'm still learning about how to talk to people every day, but it definitely has allowed me to have patience with people, a deeper level of patience than probably somebody who hasn't been as traveled would have,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even if somebody sees things completely different than what I see them, I'll sit down there and I won't even argue. I'll just listen. Like, I'll see their perspective and hear their argument. And like, okay, well, okay, that's a perspective,
Right.
and it's beautiful to have that kind of freedom of thought.
I found that Americans are very ethnocentric, but as I started to connect with all of these people abroad, I found we're all the same, and we just need to learn how to be able to communicate. That'll take us a long way, I think.
That's exactly right. I can get right behind that.
So after you got done with school abroad and traveling abroad, what were your first steps?
So post grad school, we jumped right into travel nursing, and before we officially, set down in one place, we mapped out kind of a route, for both of our careers, because I still want to pursue the acting career and do that life. And my wife is an excellent nurse, and so, and I'm not biased or anything, but I had to, just had to plug that. We wanted to find states and cities that lent itself to both of our careers, and so we started off in New Orleans, which was, again, a cultural experience in itself. I didn't think I could get more culturally, educated than I did going to New Orleans and spending 3 months living there. And
Explain
cool,
that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
I mean, oh man, if you haven't been, I mean, I'm sure you've been to New Orleans, but if there's any of your listeners who haven't been to New Orleans, I mean, it is a melting pot. It's a gumbo, as they have in New Orleans, a gumbo of people.
There is flavor in New Orleans that I haven't seen many other places.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's very strongly French influenced. And I mean, the origins of, I mean, I got to learn about a lot of the origins of cultural nuances, the way folks talk down in that area, really how native Louisianians, in New Orleans folk how their speech pattern has informed other speech patterns of different cultures and stuff like that. It's like, wow, like it was huge eye opener for me.
Yeah.
And then you obviously get all the people that are there, but I mean, it's really kind of like the jumping off point of a lot of American history.
Yeah. It's definitely, if our listeners haven't ventured down that way, I highly encourage you to. The food, the culture, the music, and even just the environment that you're in with these old buildings and these old cemeteries and these old parks that are they're just gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Gives you a flavor you just don't get anywhere else. Traveling nurse brought you down to New Orleans. That's not where you settled. Bring us from there.
So then after that, we tried to get as close to Atlanta as we could. We ended up in Augusta because there weren't any positions open for my wife down there. But Augusta was also interesting. And that was where we spent the first 3 months of the pandemic, surprisingly enough. And so we got down there and it's quiet. It was nice. It was the Southern culture in Georgia is where that Southern comfort, I believe, originates. We didn't feel a lot of it in Louisiana, for whatever reason, but like Georgia, oh man, it has my heart.
Yeah.
And we were in a perfect location. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I lived in Savannah, and when I first moved out there, I was out there for like a year and a half. My neighbors brought me food, pies. I lived on a cul-de-sac in this residential community that used to be an old plantation that had been developed. So the plantation house still existed, but just an amazing place. But we used to have clam bakes, and they would have that, close down the culvert area, and the neighbors would come out. It was amazing.
Look, I'll tell you, I have already marked off on my list a few cities, a short list of places that I want to retire, and Savannah is absolutely one of them. It's such a beautiful city.
Absolutely. And the history, it's amazing, and a lot of the town still has gas lanterns rather than just, your typical streetlights. And that, combined with the Spanish moss that grows off of the trees, it just gives a kind of an eerie flavor to it that it's just fun. And just the whole area down there is just beautiful. So I loved it.
Yeah, we were perfectly set up in Augusta because it was like, you've seen the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh yes.
where George Clooney's like, it's a geographical oddity, 2 weeks from it. So that's kind of where we were in Augusta. It was like 2 hours from everywhere. We could pop down to Savannah, pop up to Charleston, pop over to Atlanta, pop over, and then all these little cities that were just around the way that informed so much of the experiences that I've had growing up. Like I grew up singing barbershop, and so, singing all these songs with all these, growing up singing all these songs with all these references to these places, I had no idea what they were about. And then going there and living there and seeing it, it's like, whoa. I'm like, oh, this is the Mason-Dixon line. Okay, I see. Okay, I get it. The Bible Belt. Okay, I get it. All these different references. I'm like, whoa. But yeah.
One of the things that it brought to me is, if you just stay in one, let's say you grew up in one city and that's all you knew, you actually don't get the overall picture of what the world is about and what people are about. And you must have a very solid understanding of just the world in general, which I think is very insightful for you and what you're doing, and also just an understanding, trying to connect with different people and being able to do it in a way that you wouldn't have been able to do if you wouldn't have had the experiences that you shared with us.
For sure. And it definitely, as you said, it informs the stories that I get to tell. The stories that we get to tell at Borderless and through radio plays is like, it opens up the spectrum in a way that I probably would have never imagined or thought of before. Cause it's like, now there's so many different stories to pull from. And I, as an actor, as a storyteller, that's what fuels me, seeing these human stories come to life and play it out. No matter if I agree with what the story is saying or not, these are hopefully well-crafted portrayals of what actual people go through on a daily basis. And that's kind of the ethos of what we do in radio plays.
Well, and I think with your experience and background, you must do that really well. So why don't we get into that? How did those beginning steps start for you for Borderless Theatre Company and also the radio podcast that you've been doing?
Yeah, it started off with me contacting a friend of mine who I knew was capable of helping me realize this, kind of idea that I had and really helping me piece it together. Her name is Cara Limer, and she's the COO of Borderless. And, I just got on a phone call with her and I was like, hey, I have this idea and I need you to talk through it with me. And right off the bat, she was like, this is a great idea. It's a solid idea. And, unbeknownst to me, she had ran the idea after our conversation by our mentor and professor in grad school. And he was like, he echoed the same sentiment. He's like, wow, you need to do this. This is a great idea. And so then the planning process began. We said, who do we want to be on the team, and who can we rely on and trust that would take this and make it their own and take some ownership in it to see it through. And that's kind of how it started. I mean, there's other things too. Like once we got the team together, then it became a question of, okay, who are we? What kind of audience do we want to serve? And because I don't know how the idea came in, but because I had it fleshed out in my head, I really was like, we need to honor the writers, and especially, this whole craft of the stage reading. Like, we need to honor that, because that's where all of our work for now and henceforth is going to come from. If we don't have new writing, we don't work.
Right.
So I was like, we need to find a way to get this new writing out there. And so then we started just reaching out to various writer friends, writing groups, and gathering as many scripts as we could to generate what has now become our first season. And then after that, it was a process of getting the right microphone. And mind you, this is at the start of the pandemic, when all microphones are being bought out, and there's a shortage of microphones now. And so, luckily we were all able to find sufficient recording equipment to make something that was, in my opinion, we're not in a proper studio, and we're all from different locations, but it's acceptable. We have the conditions that are acceptable for what we are aiming to do for now,
Right. Well, and the equipment is the big part, and it all starts with the mic.
Oh yeah.
I also see a lot of music collaboration, in terms of the whole band doesn't typically get into the studio except for those rare times. And so they might work on a track and then send it, or they do it streaming in a way, so that they can get prepared for when they are in studio. Just cuts down on time and inconvenience. The big thing for what you're doing is we're all in lockdown, and a lot of us then couldn't go to work, or we had non-essential jobs,
Yeah.
And cabin fever, especially if you have creative juices flowing, like, it's hard just to sit there. And so finding a positive outlet, I think, is great. It's probably having a positive effect for the people that are involved with this. One of the things that the pandemic, and I'm sure your wife can attest to, is the strain on mental health.
Oh, yeah.
We can't be social. We're socially distanced. Have you found that your members are really benefiting in that way?
Yeah. I think this has been a saving grace for all of us. Now, there is one other saving grace that I would be remiss to mention if I didn't mention it, which is something I had never thought I'd see myself do. But D&D. D&D kind of came in and saved the day. But you really hit the nail on the head when you said cabin fever.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, cabin fever for me, especially, I have ADD. And so it was super real for me, because I found myself in a place where I was like, what do I do? I'm sitting here. I need to be out moving, doing something. And where we were stationed out in Augusta, it really didn't have access to a lot of outdoor, just walking,
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of I've told my wife this. I was like, man, if we didn't get out of there, after those 3 months, I probably would have certifiably gone insane, because she works the night shift, so she sleeps most all day, until she goes to work in the evening. And so I'd spend practically, 4 days by myself during a pandemic, no one to talk to, and it's like, oh my goodness. But I would say, going back to your question, it really gave each of us in the team a solid way to channel our creative juices and put into practice something that we weren't really all too familiar with, something that we had only touched on in grad school,
Mm-hmm.
and apply a lot of the acting lessons that we did learn to this new medium of audio drama, which is so cool. And you can see it starting to grow even more now so than it was before.
Are these mostly people that you went to school with in your graduating class then that are participating?
Yes. However, we do pull from, you know, other other folks beyond our acting circle from grad school. So there's an episode that hasn't come out yet, but one of my team members, she asked a couple of her friends from her acting circle because we were looking for a specific voice. And she's like, well, hey, I know somebody, from my hometown who would be perfect for this. And so it's definitely helped expand our reach as well to people who are outside of our circle,
Right.
which is the goal.
Yeah. Well, and I find that with the pandemic, people have a lot more time on their hands, and so that they're willing to participate because they have the time. Have you found that there's been an eagerness and a willingness to participate in this?
Yeah, yeah, I have found that people have really just been like, we like what you're doing. How can we get involved? Especially actors and writers, because nobody's really getting paid right now to do something, and
Right.
and so it's like, well, how can I? Now it's become a need for creatives like in that medium to just practice acting in any way,
Right.
shape, or form.
Yeah.
So been very well received, I'd say.
One thing I'll say to encourage you is that it's all about building content. And as this grows for you and your content grows, as you start to attract people listening, it gives them then a base then to also explore. It's not like you're just waiting per episode. And so that's a really good thing too. So don't be discouraged.
Yeah, and that's a great reminder. That's a great reminder, because sometimes you get kind of, especially right now when we're really kind of in a limbo, where we're starting to gather scripts, but we don't have that strong foundation yet where people are just throwing them at our feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh man, like, what are we gonna do? Is this even
Well, you're
gonna be
building
a thing?
credibility. You're also building your
Exactly.
skills within what you're doing. I know as a host, my first season, I look back and I'm like, ugh. but we all have to start somewhere, and it all starts to grow, and we hone those skills, if you will. So I'm sure you're going to find that when you're in season 2, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, wow, look at how far we've come. You mentioned a couple people in your life, Miss V. You talked about a graduate professor, some people that helped to guide you a little bit. Can you talk about, is there other people that have helped kind of steer you in that direction? It's a common theme that I find amongst my guests is there's people that come along at the right time that offer either a certain insight or certain encouragement that then kind of alters the path that you're on.
Mm.
Do you see that in your own life?
I can wholeheartedly say yes. I have had a few key people who have either, even if it's not through acting, just been a good mentor for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I have great parents, hardworking parents who, supported the things that my sister and I did, for sure. Like I would not, I don't want to discount that at all, but you see them on a daily basis, you know who they are, right? So it's like the people who are outside of that circle who still took the time to care for, this little kid from Aurora, Colorado, kind of going through, his life. Those are the people who I also appreciate deeply. And I had in my undergrad years, the professor of English there, who also was the head of the drama, whose name was Dr. Mark Robinson. He was just, his mentorship was invaluable because he saw that I had a strong passion for theater, and his daughter, and I shared that same passion, even though she was a couple years older than me. And he saw that in me and really nurtured that as well. And he, we had a very small program. And so just to have that one-on-one kind of like, all right, I know who you are now. I know what kind of roles that I want to throw at you to kind of help you grow, to help kind of change, shift, your what am I trying to say? Like make you more adaptable is what I'm trying to say. Having that was really key. The years between grad school actually were interesting because, working in public relations and stuff, I actually did marketing for Florida Hospital. They had a small campus out in Denver, and I was just doing recruitment and marketing for them for 3.5 years, and during that time kind of moonlighting as an actor, when I had spare time. But one relationship that I had that was beautiful was a relationship that I had with one of the professors two of the professors at Red Rocks Community College out in Colorado. And they saw me sitting at my recruitment booth, and they were like, "Oh, you like acting and you've done this and you've directed in this? Well, we're looking for an adjunct professor, just to teach a low-level acting class. And if you have some free time, we'd love to have you, submit your resume." So I did, and they hired me. And it was that kind of attention and that kind of like mentorship that encouraged me to say, "Hey, you know what? This is what I love to do. This is my path. Like, this is where I thrive," because I personally believe that when you're doing what you love to do, like, chase what you love to do. Basically, at the end, chase what you love to do. I mean, sure, you have to do things to get by, but like, if you're chasing what you want to do, then nothing but good things will come from it. Because you're applying things that come naturally to you and growing your skill set.
You're finding harmony within your life too. I find that if you're not on the right path, the path has a way of kicking you on it, whether you want to be or not. Sometimes our dreams are different than what ends up coming as a result of those efforts. And it's interesting to me because for as much as you're doing, you're networking, you're growing, you're honing your craft, and it'll be interesting to see what happens as a result of this 5-10 years from now. So it's fun in that aspect. I believe in that path. When you find that you're in balance and harmony, you're in the right place doing the right thing. There's no better feeling than that, because a lot of our life is just getting to that point.
Yeah. And so many people, it's such an important, and such an important mindset for people to be in. I completely agree with that, because it makes your life happier. It makes the people who are around you, it makes their lives happier. It's just like, you're a better person to be around, quite frankly, in that sense,
And you must be feeling that now. I mean, you're done with your first season right now, or are you finishing it?
So we're finishing it. Yeah, we're in the midst of actually a rehearsal right now for our very last episode, our very last play for the first season. But we've already started releasing shows, releasing episodes and stuff, because they've been finished now. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be plugging in the description all the links to find you and the show. So your plans now are looking forward. You're getting done with this last episode. Are you going to start up a season 2? And if so, when is that going to happen for you?
We are. There's no date set yet, but because we have a handle on things now, the first season was a kind of a trial and error, just to see what worked, what didn't work between each play. And so now that we know how to kind of run a smooth ship, so to speak, season 2, and I think the momentum for a season 2, especially among the team, and among just the and just going off of the feedback that we've received, has really given us the impetus to really do a season 2. So yeah, we're definitely starting to collect more scripts, reach out to more writing groups, and find more diverse scripts. Just find those stories, that. And season 1, I'd say, it's just a beautiful gathering of stories that are present, that are from the past, that are completely like fictionalized, and some that are based off of experiences that people have had that have a little bit more like, of a embellishment to them. But I'd say we have a good solid start to what the following seasons could become.
Yeah, that's great. Let me ask, I find that behind every great guy, there's a greater woman. and it sounds like you might have one of the better ones. Can you tell me about that, and how much of a rock and support has she been to you through this process?
Yeah. It is no secret, if you know me, that like my wife is 200%. She's just a beautiful person, a beautiful soul. She is empathetic and caring. All the things that I aspire to be more of. She's
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
she just has these innate qualities that I think you know allow her to be good at her job as a nurse too. And she's been my rock for sure. Even before we got married, we didn't know that this was going to be the path that we were going to be on.
mm-hmm.
We've been together now. We've been together now 12 years, married almost 8.
Wow,
And so,
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, thanks. And it really, not in a corny kind of way, but it really does feel like um, every day is kind of a new day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get tired of her. She doesn't get tired of me. Sometimes she does when if I don't do something on time or whatever. But that's just how it is. I've definitely, anyway. Well, yeah, she's definitely been a rock and understanding, because her family, like, they don't come from the world of acting. They come from a world of doctors and CPAs and this and that. And so
Mm-hmm.
me being the lone person, the lone creative out there, I really kind of had to fight for my place in her family,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. Not to throw them under the bus or anything, but I just kind of giving the context to how much of a rock she is.
Protective parents want to make sure that their daughter's taken care of. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the things
You had to
that
prove yourself a
her
little bit
dad
first,
said.
right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I didn't mean to stomp on you. You said what?
Oh.
What did your dad say?
No, that's what her dad actually said. Her funny little snippet is, I had asked for her hand in marriage, and her dad was like, at first he started by changing the subject, and then he just was like, basically, no, because I want to see where your career goes, and she's a nurse, and my son's a doctor, and
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see where you're gonna go.
Right.
Give
Right.
me 6 months. Let's revisit this in 6 months. And so that was, I think, honestly, it was that moment that made us stronger between me and my wife, because I didn't
That's
tell
great.
her at first, but it was eating
Yeah.
at me, so I had to tell her, because she was giving me pressure.
Mm.
She's like, Sean, I thought that you said by this point in time we're gonna plan this whole thing and da 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 da. And
Mm-hmm.
so in my mind, I'm like, well, baby, I did, but I also had this conversation with your dad. So
Mm-hmm.
how do I,
Mm-hmm.
But she really has been a rock, in the sense that there has been no, like, just an unwavering support. And when it came to acting, and I decided, to quit my recruitment job and go teach part-time and pursue the acting thing, she was like,
Mm-hmm.
do it. Let's figure out a plan. She's a big planner. She's like, let's figure out what we're going to do to supplement that income. But I see that you are needing that. And literally that led to everything that has happened today. That led to us moving abroad to England, getting into grad school, and me pursuing it there, and just starting up this whole radio plays and Borderless Theatre Company. It's, without her support, I don't think that I would have found it within myself to continue to push for something like this, push myself
Mm-hmm.
forward. So
well, that's great. Yeah, very supportive. So I have to ask, you went back to dad 6 months later, or when did you go back?
I did go back to dad 6 months later.
What did dad say? I know me and my listeners are curious.
He was still, he was not ready to have that conversation. It just wasn't a conversation he was ready to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a funny story thinking back on it now. Because there were a lot of, not on my part. I mean, I'm an emotional person, but like, there were a lot of tears that happened over that weekend when we went back to visit him and her mom. And, it was a lot of like, well, you're fine. If you don't support my relationship that you've known about for the last 4 years, then maybe just maybe you just don't need to be at the wedding,
Mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
know? And then I think by her saying that, they came around to it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but it definitely took it definitely took Dad some coming around to the
Sure.
idea
Well,
that,
I would hope that
you
he
know,
has now, and seeing what you've done and what you're doing. Um, you're not just hoping for the next gig. You're pursuing your own dream and creating it yourself.
for
And
sure.
what you've put together during this pandemic is something that you should really be proud of. You've lifted your own sense of mental health, but also that of those involved, as well as the listeners. This is something that I think is the ripple effect or the butterfly effect. It spreads positivity, and there's no better thing to be involved with than that, in my opinion.
Well, thank you, Bo. I appreciate you saying that. And that, we always need perspective. And sometimes, for me, I know I get caught up in losing perspective sometimes. And so it's a good reminder when you talk to folks who see that and
Yeah,
or remind me of that. So thank you.
you're welcome. I'll share one parable, and I'll probably edit it out. But I heard once, it's really hard to see the ABC soup when you're swimming in the bowl, clinging to a letter.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard when you're in the mix. And so sometimes having that outside perspective is handy. And I try to get that occasionally to keep myself in check.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that parable to the bank and I'm gonna put it in my pocket. That's a great parable.
Anything I haven't plugged for you, and anything that you're going to be doing the last episode, are you going to do that live, or is that something that you're going to release at a later date?
We're gonna release it at a later date. So all of our stuff, if I may shameless plug, I know you're gonna put it in the links, but on Borderless, www.borderlesstheatrecompany.com. That's theater with the RE, not the ER. You can find all the links to everywhere that we're up, where that our podcasts are available, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and then you'll be able to listen and stuff, and you'll see kind of our show lineup as well.
Can you give us a flavor of what your first season's about?
Oh, absolutely. It's a mixture of stories. So the first 4 episodes right now that are coming out are an anthology series by a writer named Barris Wayne, who's up in New York, and it tackles the subject of grief and the many facets of it and how people deal with it. And some of it's lighthearted, some of it's a little bit heavy, but it's a beautiful mixture of stories of people kind of going through different forms of grief, and how they navigate through that. And then, there's not an overarching theme to season 1, but I would say, it's yeah, there's not an overarching theme to it, but I would say each story in its individual right tells about somebody's journey, talks about somebody's journey and the circumstances that they're in and how they navigate their circumstances.
Yeah. Sounds like my interviews.
No, man, it's been great.
That's great.
But that's how they can find out all of our stuff. And
how many stories are comprised in your first season then? Or how many
technically
is each episode is each episode a different story?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Each episode is a different story. Now there will be there are 3 plays that we do that are tackling the full length play. So we've actually broken those up into 2 acts. But the first 4 are different stories from the same writer, the different short stories. And then we'll go into other short plays, and then 3 full-length plays that are going to be broken down by acts.
And when you're doing these, are they all live, or are people recording their bit and then sending it, and then you have to master them all together?
That's exactly what we do. We edit it beforehand, add in a couple little sound effects here and there, and then we do all the myself and our editor, we do the mastering. But we also, it's kind of cool, we have the interviews with the writers at the end of each of the plays.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, so after this fourth play is released in a couple weeks, then the following week, or 2 weeks after that, excuse me, we'll have an interview with our writer, and we'll ask them questions about how they came to the subject and how, these stories informed, or how their lives informed these stories, and da 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 da. So that's also a great way, like a good insight for actors.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I love, is hearing actors and writers talk about their craft and what informs them and inspires them.
Right. Is it easy to do this, to kind of get all these clips and put them together in a sensible fashion?
It can be, if you have an idea of what you're doing, but it is
Sure.
a long process, and it takes a good ear, to really hear the cadence of the dialogue and understand how it all flows together,
Yeah.
to kind of, to master it and really, have a nice sounding audio drama.
Do you work from a storyboard?
No, I probably should, but I mean, because we have the script, I go through the script
Sure.
and, mark out, for example, where the sound effects are going to be, or, I'll put markers in each of the files to where each scene ends, and I'll just take it scene by scene, and I'll edit it down to something that sounds coherent, and then put it all together.
That's great. And it sounds like each one of these stories, at least a lot of them, have individual lessons that you can learn just by listening.
Definitely.
That's
Oh
great.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well,
So
you are doing some great things, sir. I look forward to spending some time listening to your episodes and seeing the work that you've been doing. When is the last episode going to be finished and aired?
the very last play is going to come out on July 8th, 2021.
Awesome.
And then we'll finish with the interview on August 5th.
That's excellent. And then it's time for vacation.
Yes, it's always time for a vacation.
You got to stop to smell the roses,
Oh yeah,
especially when you have a
definitely.
beautiful wife. Yeah,
Oh yeah, exactly.
that's what
She
life's
wouldn't let
all
me
about.
have it do it anyway, so.
Yeah. Well, and in the end, I hope Dad's happy, because it sounds like she's happy, and I think what you're doing is going to become successful.
I appreciate that. And I have to say to you both, like, it's incredible what you do as well. Just allowing people to get on your show and tell their story. I mean, it's so helpful, and you're doing a huge service to folks like us out there too. So thank you for what you do.
I appreciate that. The lessons that I bring from this is all of these stories individually are individual stories, but collectively they become the story of us and the insight that it started to offer. I've had a lot of people say, I've always wanted to know how they did that, and now I kind of have some ideas. And so hopefully this will inspire listeners to pursue their own dreams. And maybe there's a guest that is similar to what they're doing that they might find some insight from. That's the best that
Yeah.
I can offer, and it makes me happy to do so. So thank you.
Yeah. Are you on Instagram as well? I take it. I can follow you on Instagram or something.
I have not been on Instagram yet. Everybody keeps telling me I'm turning 47 this month. And
Nice.
yeah, I guess I just need to expand to that format. I am on everything else: Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, then obviously all the platforms for podcasting. But yeah, I'll have to take a look at that and start promoting a little bit more. Seems like that's really
Yeah.
taken off since when I first was familiar with it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what you do, I think people will flock to. So
That's
yeah.
great. I appreciate your time. Anything else I can plug for you before I let you go?
I think we've got a lot of great stuff. We talked about a lot of things, so I think we're good.
Awesome. If you are interested, I'd love to touch base with you in a year or so and see where you've gone and how far this has come for you, and maybe discuss some of that journey if you're interested.
Oh, absolutely. I'd definitely talk to you again, Bo. Yeah, it'd be
All
great.
right. All right. I appreciate your time today, Sean. I'll send you a link via our email once we're done. And you have yourself a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, you too. Have a
All
good
right.
one.
You too. Bye.
This has been Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany, exploring deep stories from real-life guests with real-life experiences, providing insight to our listeners with every story. Stay up to date on future podcasts by bookmarking digitalvoiceswithbotiffany.podbean.com and follow Bo on social media by searching Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Have an idea for a future story? Send your idea to acrmadison@gmail.com. Until next time, grab life by the horns and keep inspiring others.